Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Embracing AI Solutions Across a Multi-Generational Workforce, presented by Invoke Insights. My name is Sarah Wallach, and I'll be your moderator for this session. Before we dive in, let's quickly introduce our speakers for today. Chad Heiner, SVP of Product at Invoke, has extensive experience in post-acute and hospice care, as well as clinical informatics. We also have Jamie Kolker, Senior Clinical Technology Advocate and RN since 2007, whose dual expertise in nursing and business administration uniquely positions her to drive innovation and efficiency in healthcare technology.
Hello.
Hello all.
Today's presentation will cover some of the concerns we hear about AI in healthcare, but then we'll establish how to address those concerns, and we'll bring it around to the opportunities that AI presents. And then to conclude with the key question at hand, we'll talk about how to encourage adoption of AI across your agency. We'll have time for Q&A at the end, so please feel free to submit your questions through the Q&A feature. You can also engage with our participants through the chat feature if you would like. And I will facilitate that part of this conversation as we move along. We'll also take questions at the end. And with that, let's get started. Jamie, I'll let you take it from here.
Thanks, Sarah. Hello, everyone. Really excited to talk to you about this topic today. AI is a very exciting, yet it can be a very complex topic, and it's understandable why, perhaps you or some of your team members have some concerns and skepticism around AI and AI adoption. As a nurse myself, and someone who works with people and talks about AI every single day, this is something that I can really appreciate. I really appreciate the questions and the curiosity surrounding AI, and there's a lot of hype out there. So it's important that we take a moment to pause and learn about AI when you're in such a sensitive industry such as home health care and hospice.
Yeah, Jamie, I couldn't agree more. Let's dig into this a little bit. I think that for sure the concerns are real, and the opportunities are also real. So let's dig into that a bit.
So Chad, to kick this off, I have a quick question. So what do you think most people are thinking about when they hear the word AI or consider AI?
I think that most people think of AI the way that it's been sort of hyped up most recently with ChatGPT and others sort of, large language models where you can kind of ask it a very generic sort of question and get a response. And that has, maybe introduced folks to the technology and piqued some curiosity around it. But, really the thing that they're missing is that AI has been around a long time, and specialized models have been, really the backbone of it, and sort of building off of that to the large language models. But we're going to discuss a little bit more about, what real AI can do for home healthcare clinicians specifically. But I think most people are still kind of in this, chat GPT sort of mode of AI.
Yeah, definitely. And when I think of AI and, back when, especially when I was performing more direct patient care, people would talk about AI as though it was going to replace the nurse. It was going to replace that bedside care, that touch, or, pose an additional risk to the agency, from a security standpoint. So I'm looking forward to us talking a little bit more about that and diving in a little bit further.
Yeah, no question. The real value of AI for a home healthcare clinician is being a partner, being a virtual scribe, being a tool, really a tool that augments the care that you provide. And for those reasons, it's not going to replace your clinical expertise. It's not going to be probably specific enough for your certain population or your clinical specialty, if you're using the large language models. And that's why it is important to to think of AI not as a replacement for clinical staff, not even as a replacement for somebody who needs an audit, for example. Although technology does play, what AI does do well is actually provide the ability to look at large data sets and be able to find patterns within those data sets and provide real-time feedback to a clinician to help with perhaps some decision making, but also provide feedback back to the clinician about what might be missing, because it can find patterns quite well. But again, this is more of a specialized language model, not a big open source large language model.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's a bigger issue when we're considering, technology and, specifically since we're talking about AI today, that if it's not made for healthcare, it's not necessarily going to support the evolution of healthcare. And that's really what we're focused on as a healthcare industry, is enhancing that experience, not only for the clinicians and supporting the leaders, but also enhancing that patient care experience. Ultimately, we're here for the patient. And there's things to consider, such as when you're talking to your team members and you're assessing how can AI benefit my team, we need to look at things like burnout. What's contributing to that burnout? Is it, from your leadership group, if you have a lot of attrition within your team from the leadership perspective? Is it a lot of administrative requirements, or your QA team? So, there's a lot that AI can do across the business, not necessarily just in one specific arm of healthcare. So, with that, Chad, I would love to know what you would recommend that agencies should be aware of when considering the implementation of AI or any advanced technology within their agency.
Yeah, you bet. The first thing that I would be looking at is domain specific terminology. So does the AI solution that you're evaluating, does it understand the patient population that you're treating? Does it understand the clinical disciplines that are providing that care? So does it, for example, understand the role of an occupational therapist in the home setting, or a speech language pathologist, or a hospice physician for that matter? Does it have an understanding of what ADLs are, or an OASIS assessment, or homebound status? Does it understand those sort of specialized language, the domain expertise? The other thing I'd be looking for is workflow integration. Does it seamlessly support the clinical workflow, or does it require the clinician to perform sort of unnecessary tasks outside of their normal workflow? What we know is that in order for technology to be readily adopted, it has to meet the clinician where they're at and not ask them to do, extra tasks outside of that. So domain expertise, workflow integration, are absolute requirements. And then the other part of it is, and we'll dive more into this, but really the compliance, and the accuracy. Some of
Yeah.
the compliance portions of it are really important. A lot of folks have full, auditing departments, and I'm not saying those are all going to go away, but the further upstream you can get to the actual documentation, the sooner you can address some of those downstream requirements.
Mm.
And so, under the understanding of CMS guidelines, for example, super important in the hospice space. So understanding, what is required for downstream compliance is really important.
All good points, Chad. And with good AI, meaning that one that is modeled of medically relevant information. So not just generic data. We're able to do things, for example, like checking documentation for missing information, as Chad was talking about, some of that pattern recognition, looking for proper spelling and spelling of things that are very specific to medicine. We're talking medical acronyms, diagnoses, medications. I know I'm not the only one in this room that has trouble sometimes with spelling some of those complex diagnoses and medications. Summarizing that documentation, structuring a note. There's so much potential there when it comes to just the documentation aspect. And then essentially there's AI can help clinicians focus on that patient care by automating some of those repetitive tasks and ensuring that documentation is accurate. So from a leadership perspective, AI can also provide that actionable insight. So, imagine a world where, we're implementing something in healthcare that is not only benefiting the agency or the company that you're working for, but it's directly impacting in a positive fashion your clinicians, your direct patient caregivers, your patients, and your leadership team. So you've got this multi-pronged approach of success by leveraging perhaps one or more tools to your agency. I would love the opportunity to be able to have tangible data. I know Chad's going to be talking a little bit more about that with, leveraging AI to help with that. But gosh, as a leader, I would have craved that opportunity to have tangible data to give the people the appropriate coaching that they deserve to be successful in their roles. So I would like to ask, sorry, Chad. I would love to ask this group, that's in attendance today, how would you spend an extra hour of each day if AI freed up your time? So add any thoughts that you might have into the chat. What would you do with that extra hour? Full disclosure, I'd be taking a nap. That's me personally, but I don't want to sway anyone. I don't want to be biased. But please drop those into the chat. We would love to see what you would do. Obviously, I wouldn't be napping on the job, but if I'm considering that I'm documenting after hours, that's what I would be doing. Chad, what have you seen with agencies as they're leveraging AI? How would they use AI to solve some of their biggest issues?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's any surprise that some of the biggest issues that the agencies are struggling with is the documentation burden. And that sort of trickles down to a lot of things related to recruitment, retention, and being able to meet the needs of their patients. And so we've seen agencies leverage AI for some of those biggest problems. And work-life balance is a key component to that. You mentioned what would you do if you had an extra hour a day remaining, and it's probably not go see another patient. And that leads to retention, and that leads to recruitment, and that allows agencies to continue to take on more customers. The other part of it is really the compliance piece of it. When you look at the upstream benefits of identifying early what may be missing from the documentation, there's real value there, and there's obviously downstream benefits with regards to reimbursement and getting into a posture where you're ready for that audit when it comes. So there's those are the big ones.
Excellent. So when it comes to, so there's another big question here. So AI and data security. Chad, I would like to hand that off to you because, that is your area of expertise. I'll let you tackle that topic.
Yeah, you bet. Well, I mean, I would say just, security, compliance, privacy are completely non-negotiable. Every vendor that you consider working with should have HIPAA compliance in mind. They should be able to share with you what their SOC 2 audit revealed. They should be able to demonstrate a level of transparency around how data is being leveraged and how it's being used to train models or not, how it protects PHI. And in the state of the world that we live in today, that's an important component to be very mindful of how we protect data. Now, having said that, there's a lot of compliance requirements, that are absolutely necessary. And most, I would say, you do the due diligence, but find a vendor partner you trust and that you're solving problems with, and that they understand what problems you are trying to solve with with their technology. And it might be that sharing your data does help. Sharing patient data does help automate and streamline documentation requirements, completing forms, for example, and getting as much of that data up front to benefit that clinician and their end-to-end workflow is an absolute good use case for data exchange. Just make sure that they're following all the appropriate security and privacy measures.
Thanks, Chad.
You bet.
And we do get a lot of questions surrounding data and security, and understandably so, we get that. So if you continue to have questions about data and security, or honestly anything that you're curious about throughout this presentation, please feel free to drop those questions in the chat. So now I want to bring us to the next step in preparing to adopt this AI. So think about adoption. If you have ever implemented a new tool into any part of your agency, you know that there can be a significant learning curve. There can be resistance to change, a lot of fun things. Implementations, are interesting. I'll just say that. AI, despite those notable benefits, it's not immune to those unique things within agencies. We're asking humans to change their behaviors. That's something that we talk about often here. So one of the key things that we want to watch out for is how to enable technology adoption by adjusting our resources and strategies to the specific needs of the unique qualities of your staff, whether those be generational qualities or perhaps just an appetite for change and technology advancement. The way that different people perceive technology overall is going to be something to definitely consider when you're bringing these things into your agency. So there are a couple ways we can think about this.
Yeah, Jamie, one of the most sort of well-known graphs that's here on the screen is the adoption curve, product adoption curve. And having deployed technology for the greater part of the last 15 years with electronic health records, and now deploying new innovative technology, clinicians fall into a few categories. I would say that in my experience with clinicians, they fall more into the pragmatist bucket, like most, but probably then tend to be even more on the conservative side. So this graph might skew a little bit to the right, with maybe a longer tail up front, maybe less tech enthusiasts and visionaries, and more conservatives and skeptics. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just is something you have to take into consideration when you do deploy technology. It is important. I would say, some of the most important strategies here is to engage early and often at the multiple levels. So when you find your tech enthusiasts and visionaries, work with them and develop champions, but at the same time, engage with the pragmatists and engage with the conservatives and listen to their feedback, listen to their concerns, address them. And then when you get those folks on board, you can really lift the whole organization. And we've got many examples of this where kind of a slow start, and then once you start getting some wins, you start demonstrating some value, you start bringing over those pragmatists, and then everybody's on board. And I've seen this happen with multiple technologies in the healthcare space, including electronic health records, where there was a lot of resistance initially. And now, it's taken a number of years, but now if you went back to a clinician and said, hey, you have to go back to, documenting, by hand, writing out your notes, I don't think anybody would want to go back to that. But it's taken a while to get there. And so, engaging with the clinicians, getting their input, listening to their feedback, and addressing them and getting them involved in the process, I think is the biggest keys.
Absolutely. I think that engagement is very, very important for successful adoption. So another way to look at it is, let's look at it from the generational perspective. So certainly we're not here to offend anyone or to drop anybody into a certain bucket. But depending on what people are used to and how established they are in their career, and I say that with, considering those that they've been doing this a long time, they've adopted certain patterns and behaviors and routines, personal preferences. Technology adoption will vary quite widely across those generations due to multiple factors. So understanding these differences is very crucial for successful AI integration in that multi-generational workforce. Just as Chad said, you know, approaching the tech savvy or the go-getter or the high performer who always wants to be the first in line to do the new things, they're going to be your easier win, and they are a great spokesperson. But we do still need to pay attention to, perhaps that individual that is less tech savvy or on the skeptical or resistant side of the spectrum. Because I would, in my experience, since doing this, those can be some of your greatest spokespersons when implementing new technology. When you win them over, they're going to be your greatest tool to leverage when it comes to implementing across your business.
Absolutely.
So let's break this down into a few key areas. So we have digital literacy. So those younger generations, they have stronger digital literacy skills. So, I'll confess, I'm an elder millennial. And I'm one of those that remembers the dial-up phone and the introduction of the internet. So those generations that are younger than myself, they don't know any different. So they've grown up alongside of technology. So their attitudes are going to be different. Those younger generations tend to see technology as just a part of their daily life, while the older generations, including, I'll say myself, the older millennials, Gen X, boomer generations, they may be a little bit more cautious, skeptical, or even resistant. So things to consider when you're looking at your the different generations and the appetite for technology across your workforce. Something to think about is the accessibility and affordability. So access to technology and having that reliable internet can impact adoption. So I always think that the first impression is the lasting one. So when you're introducing something new to someone who perhaps is already a little bit more resistant and skeptical, we want to make sure it works really well from the get-go. We want that to be a good lasting impression for them. So identifying those barriers up front is going to be very important. Owning those barriers and trying to optimize how can we make this work in best case scenario, considering these things. Comfort levels. So those younger generations may just feel more comfortable with the smaller devices. We do hear from nurses that are very comfortable charting from a phone, like a phone size device, while others, myself included, prefer a larger type of tablet or laptop or even a desktop computer to complete their documentation. They like the larger amount of real estate to navigate a little bit easier. So that is definitely something to consider. So by understanding these nuances, these unique things, we can tailor the approach of introducing AI and other tools, ensuring that each generation feels supported and empowered throughout the process. Going back to what Chad was saying, is that early engagement and introduction and education is going to be very important with the success of implementing new technology. So want to provide you a quick example of a team that I had worked with that they're very near and dear to my heart. I did a trial with them with our technology solution, and it went extremely well. It could not have gone better. And some of the things that I wanted to highlight as part of that success was that they did do those things. They did introduce the idea of implementing that technology quite early. They brought it into not only as we talked about before, their typical super users, but I encouraged them to get their skeptics on board, bring them as part of the trial, because we want to hear from them as well. But the leadership was probably the most vital part of that. The leadership was bought in and sold as into what the potential benefits could be, And they really emphasized that and engaged with their team early on. Lots of communication, had a one portal of communication to get feedback from those trial users, and that allowed us to partner more successfully. So how do we make that AI adoption work for everyone? So we're going to be coming back to that same group that I was talking about. So the key is tailoring training. So offering different levels of support. So basic training for those less familiar with technology, and perhaps more advanced hands-on options for those eager to take a deep dive. Mix up your formats. Use visual aids, live demos, and even perhaps peer-led sessions. So the goal is going to be to meet people where they are so no one feels left behind. So for example, do not default to introducing a new technology one time and one time only during a team meeting via a PowerPoint demonstration. That's not necessarily going to reach your large spectrum of clinicians or staff members. Think of different modalities for them to learn. So going back to that particular group that I was talking about that was very successful. So we had the leadership support and the education, they were very engaged. But how did we partner as client and vendor to appropriately reach these different types of individuals, these different types of learners? So something that we did email education, we did PDF handouts, we provided live demonstrations, offered the opportunity for open forum, so like a Teams meeting, for example, where people are able to come in and find out best practices or ask questions about, perhaps some barriers that they've bumped into along the way. But then also even offering the opportunity for people to sign up for one-on-one sessions. Because, not everybody's going to be comfortable providing feedback or speaking up in a group type setting. So giving people also that level of comfort that they can speak privately to somebody about the issues that they're having with the technology without judgment. And let's see here. So as you're introducing AI, it is natural for your team to face some hesitation. Expect that, fully expect that, particularly among those employees who might worry about technology replacing their roles, that hesitancy that we talked about. So one way to address this is demystify AI. Demonstrate it, show it as a tool to reduce some of those repetitive tasks, enhance their ability to focus on what they do best, which is caring for patients. I don't know a single clinician who just loves documenting and has less of a desire to provide that direct patient care. The clinicians that I speak to want to do what they do best, and that's take care of patients. We can't remove documentation. We can't do that. Chad would agree with that. I know he would. We can't remove it. But how can we reduce some of that burden, whether it be from the compliance, the data extraction, the efficiency aspect of it? So one way of showing all of this is that demonstrate to them that it's important to your team to hear those stories of success. Whether you have some success stories of your own that you would like to share with the team of implementing technology, ask them to bring some stories forward to share with their peers. Give your team the opportunities to share how they've reduced time doing those administrative tasks and gained that additional quality time with their patients. You could even provide examples of how the quality of documentation has improved. A lot of people don't know, clinicians in particular, they only know what they see. They're looking at their particular documentation, but it is really helpful for them to better understand what you're seeing from a reporting perspective. As to how perhaps they individually are performing, or as the agency is performing as a whole with documentation compliance. Celebrating these wins, celebrate those wins. It builds momentum and confidence for your team. And these are all great tips, but Chad, does the type of AI tool matter when it comes to helping teams with adoption?
Yes, absolutely. The type of tool that you use, it makes a big difference. And, there are a few things that I would, again, say that are non-negotiable. The ease of use. So, for example, if you provide just another layer of technology on top of an already sort of cumbersome workflow, you're not adding value. Mm-hmm. So the the type of technology that ask a clinician to begin using, that it should provide value and it should be easy to use, and not require them to go sort of outside of their normal workflow to complete tasks. In fact, it should automate many of those tasks for them. And again, that's what a specialized language model, or sort of a rules-based approach can do. It can solve very sort of specific tasks really well that are repetitive. And if you can, you work with your vendor partner to address some of those workflow inefficiencies in a very simple, intuitive, easy way, then you're going to get immediate value, give immediate value to the clinician. Again, it goes back to some basic components of engaging with that end user, understanding where their pain points are, understanding what problem you're looking to solve. And if it is around, efficiency, and we hear a lot about the documentation requirements and the time that it takes to complete the documentation. And so there is still a big push, and we're spending a lot of time and energy and resources trying to figure out how to solve for some of those inefficiencies. It's important that you engage with your vendor partner, and they really have a good understanding of what the problem is that you're trying to solve, and what specific role AI can play in that. And then, building a trusting relationship. Some of our best partners and customers are ones that we've partnered with for a long time, and we understand where their business pain points are, and we collaborate on developing solutions to address them. And so if you can build that sort of a culture of collaboration where folks are involved in trying to solve for the same problem, that you're involving the clinicians at sort of every stage, and it's the ease of use is just intuitive. I think that's a recipe for success.
Well, and at the end of the day, every generation in our workforce is going to share, I would say, the same goal, if not similar goals, providing the best possible care for our patients. I think we can all agree on that. That is a goal that we all have across the industry. And AI can help achieve that, but only in a way that includes and empowers everyone on the team. It's going to benefit clinicians in the long run when it comes to promoting that work-life balance. We talk a lot about that work-life balance, but how do we execute it? And AI can actually be one of those tools to help make the work-life balance a reality. And we need to understand each generation's needs. So by understanding those generational needs, fostering that collaboration, and offering the right tools and training, we can create an environment where AI is embraced across the board. And in doing so, we will be much more equipped, much better equipped to serve our patients now and in the future.
Yep. And the one thing that I would just want everybody to, sort of leave this webinar with is that, AI will absolutely not replace a skilled clinician. And even an unskilled clinician, a nursing assistant, for example, or a home aide, it is in the state where we're at right now, it's meant to support at best and augment and reduce some of the cognitive load or some of the administrative burden, but absolutely not meant to replace. It's meant to support the workflow of the clinicians, and ultimately allow them to be more engaged with the patient and remove that sort of barrier, that electronic health record that sits between them, and remove that burden and allow them to spend more quality time with the patient.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chad.
You bet.
Thank you both. So at this point, we'll take a moment for a quick Q&A. We do have, it looks like, 3 questions that have come in. And actually, it looks like, Chad, the first one that we have touches on what you just addressed, but just to make sure that we get it covered because it is typically the elephant in the room, is do you have any very specific suggestions on how to address concerns who might fear that AI will replace their jobs? What would you say to them as kind of a quick way to assure them that this is truly a way, can be done in a way that will truly benefit them?
Yeah, I there hasn't been a an example that's emerged in healthcare yet where a job, especially a clinician's job, would be replaced. At best, the biggest challenge we have in the industry is our workforce and retaining our workforce. And you're going to have to provide tools. We all are going to have to develop tools that give them time back in their day, and it's not replacing them. It's really just supporting them, and just like a lot of devices that we use today to help us get through our day a little quicker, whether it be on your phone or through email communication or text messaging, or this is just yet another tool that once it gets in the hands of clinicians and they provide feedback, and good technology companies listen and iterate and iterate and iterate until it actually solves for that problem. The role of the clinicians, the job security of a clinician, I don't think is in jeopardy at all.
Chad, thank you for covering that for us. I think that's really important to remember as there are so many tools that have been introduced to support people, make them more successful, and help them move forward. So that is really what we're seeing AI do for the industry as a whole. The next question I have, and either one of you can take this, I am sure. But what are some quick wins that can be achieved with AI that most people notice right off the bat, that kind of spark that interest in AI and help even some people get over any kind of fears or disorientation they may have?
From my perspective, and Chad may want to layer on top of this. So from my perspective, what I've seen as the quick win is that time. It's the efficiency and ease of use. And so something we partner with clinicians on is using software to help them speed up their documentation process, because again, we have a lot of different types of users, whether they're very proficient with typing on a keyboard like I have in front of myself, or using their thumbs using a tablet. And so it's, I don't know, Chad, I feel like I need your help on this one. You might have a different perspective.
Well, I think from a technology perspective, speech recognition utilizes AI. It's you're training models that are specific to a domain. When we were developing models for nurses, after having developed them for physicians, they're slightly different, and a PT versus OT versus social worker are all very different. So there's an AI component to that here at Envoke we've been involved in for a long time. So a quick win, you can speak a lot faster than you can type. That's pretty simple. Yeah. But when you layer on a generative AI, a large language model, on top of that, you get the added benefit of grammar, punctuation, formatting, and that's where you can really kind of provide immediate value back to a clinician, especially those who are using technology for the first time. Speech recognition hasn't always been available for non-physicians, and now it is.
Right.
And it's on their device, and it's HIPAA compliant. So they can just kind of narrate their patient encounter in a very natural way, tell that story, and then allow AI, and this is actually using a generative approach to it, to format it and structure it and put it into the format that you want. Now, the next generation of that is going to be able to take that unstructured narrative and place it directly into the specific discrete data fields within an EHR. And again, that's going to require collaboration between your technology partners and your agencies in the industry to say, hey, look, we need to solve for this problem. Let's do it together. And that collaboration is really what the industry needs to keep our clinicians working in the in-home space for sure.
Couldn't have said it better myself,
Very
Chad.
good. Very good. Thank you both. Love hearing both of your perspectives. So, our last one, really quickly here, is we talk about integrating AI into the workflow. And, being what we do at Invoke, we talk about documentation. But is there any part of the workflow that you can think of that a lot of people start with AI and then get to be able to see from clinician to the operational side that there's just a key part that makes everything operate better with AI involved? Is it documentation? Are there financial aspects that can be helped? Where along the workflow do you see most people starting and then ending up with AI?
Well, we have had our bias, I'll say Invoke's bias is really helping that clinician at that point of care, right? Giving them time back in their day and leveraging technology to help them do that. But another use case that has proven to be quite successful and is really looking at large swaths of data. And so, for example, if you were to ask an agency today, how is it that you are auditing your records for compliance, for downstream billing, or quality metrics or measurements, it's still a very manual process today. In fact, we have agencies out there that are still doing it on paper, and they're still logging into the electronic health record and navigating to a specific patient and kind of navigating through that EHR to find and pull out and check a box on a paper sheet. As you can imagine, very time consuming, and skilled clinicians are providing this or being asked to do this, and very small sample size. You take that a different model and say, export, all of your data, thousands of patient encounters, and we've developed technology to look through all of it. And so when you can identify those, documentation patterns, and that's something that a trained AI model can do quite well. So again, looking at the use case, I would say start with the problem you're trying to solve and then work your way back from that. And a lot of folks are looking at AI and just kind of throwing it at a problem. I've got AI, let me go see if I can solve a problem with it, as opposed to looking at what the problem is you're trying to solve, whether it's compliance, quality, efficiency, and then kind of working your way back and developing a very specialized tool to address that specific problem. And once we get a whole suite of those, then you can really see it advance. But it's going to take a little bit of time, and I'd say, show a little bit of patience and then collaborate and iterate and iterate and iterate.
And on that note, we don't have any other questions, but I think that's a good place to conclude our Q&A and our presentation. But before we go, I just want to thank everyone for joining us and mention that we really would love to hear from everyone. If you have any ideas for upcoming informational presentations, questions that you've been trying to answer, discussions that have been going on in your agency, please feel free to send them to connect@invoke.com. As you may have noticed when you registered, this presentation is put on by Invoke Insights, and everything under Invoke Insights will be truly informational and aimed at helping the industry move forward and answering some of these more challenging questions. So again, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it, and we'll send you the recording tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.